We're going to somewhere. Okay, that would be good. Thank you.
Oh, if I get it.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah, yeah. The real one.
I have a meeting tomorrow. Just
If I get my car.
no, that's okay. We'll just. Yes, it came. Okay, thank you. Oh, wait, I'm just thinking, is that or the anointing, is that it?
No, do you have to close the door?
Oh, yeah, here it is, here it is. Yeah, okay. How are you? I'm curious.
Sorry, and there's a brisk of a boy, no, he's 8 years old, that's now I mean, a dad's class girl.
And I'm sure that's showing you stuff. And she's.
Rabbi, I just let everybody in and I lowered the audio on your laptop.
Okay, fabulous. Hi, everyone. So those who are in the room, have a seat, and those who are on Zoom, welcome. And those who are watching on our other platforms, we're so happy to see you. I'm going to shut off my camera on my laptop so I can look at you. I am Rabbi Jessica Mates, and we are thrilled to be in through the years, through the tears, looking at Tisha B'Av through the ages. And Andy, I wish I was organized enough to have my materials together. I'm sorry, I'm not. So what you see in class is what I've prepared, but a lot of the sources are quoted, so we're good. Just a reminder that, you know, last week I smashed the glass to remind you of that even at our wedding, at joyous times, we still break the glass as a reminder of the destruction of the temple. And there's a bris inside of a kid I've known since he's little that's now a father. So, you know, we go from happy to sad. I feel so guilty bringing in such sadness with Tisha B'Av because it's a very sad holiday, but they're still joyous and beautiful. So sorry if this is so sad, but that's like such as life. And you'll see some of our commentators struggle with that sadness. So the reason that we're going in this backwards way is to understand what Tisha B'Av means to the Jewish people at different points in Jewish history. So I want everyone right now, this is a new exercise I've gotten that I love, I'm doing it with everyone. Close your eyes and imagine a dog in pants. All right, just close your eyes and imagine a dog in pants.
Imagine what?
A dog in pants. Just imagine a dog in pants, okay? Open your eyes now and open your eyes. And so, Steve, what kind of dog and what kind of pants did you see? A dog in pants, yeah. Steve, did you imagine a dog in pants or no? No? Okay, anyone?
I have no imagination.
Okay. There we go. Honest man. Okay.
I saw my dog that recently died.
Yeah.
We'll have these white pants.
Havanese and white pants. And were they on the front legs or the back legs?
Exactly.
And was the tail showing or no?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you see, Fran?
I saw the comic strip Snoopy.
Snoopy in pants, like literal pants. Wow. Okay. So when I've done this a bunch now. When I first did it, I saw a little terrier in plaid pants, only on the back legs, and I didn't leave room for the tail. Now, why do we do this exercise? Because it's a reminder that dog and pants, right? You can both imagine a dog and pants. I say imagine a dog in pants, and everybody's able to do that pretty quickly. But each of us in our head imagines a different dog in different pants, and even the pants are different. Some pants are on all four legs, some are on the back legs, the front legs. Some people left room for the tail, some didn't at all. Some added a bow tie when I've done this exercise, or a hat, a chapeau, things like that. So why do I share this exercise? Because I think it explains what the Jewish people did with Tisha B'Av. Here's what I mean. We live in modern times. where it's very easy to communicate messaging. So if I want messaging of like if during COVID, and you wanted the messaging together of what people should do to follow COVID, you have means through, electronics, through media, through journalism to get that word out, through word of mouth, whatever, right? And people are living more closely popular, there's more people in the world. So if you're living 1,000 years ago, right? And you need to get information out, you really, really, really need to figure out a way to make that information passable and make it stick. And so in the same way I asked you, for those who just came in, I asked everyone to imagine a dog in pants. And what we learned is that everybody sees a different dog in a different set of pants in their head. The pants are in the front, the back, right? So what I have to do in order to get the dog in the terrier in plaid pants out of my head, or Snoopy and Fran's head out into the world, is we have to talk about it and communicate about it and reflect on it. So between your dog and my dog, maybe together we can come to agree, okay, we're going to put Snoopy in plaid pants and we're going to have his tail showing. All right. Whatever we're going to do, we're going to synthesize the information that's in our head. So what Judaism does is the reality for Jews, and unfortunately till this day, but especially 1,000 years ago, which is this next time period we're going to, the reality for Jews is bad things are going to happen to you if you are Jewish. It's just an understood thing. We had an incredible lecture years ago from Dr. Louise Morel, who's one of our congregants and oncologist, that talked about one of the reasons the BRCA gene is so prevalent in Jewish women is because at the time of the Crusades, you could have 10 Jews. Well, 4 of them may have been killed off. So you have less Jews, a higher, a lower population. So you have a tinier population with which there are genetic diseases that are there. So or even think of the Holocaust. You have, less Jews in the world today than there were before World War II. That doesn't happen, but it happens if you kill 6 million Jews. So there's effects of being a Jew on you. So what happens is Tisha B'Av, which if we're going to review quickly, is the day that the 9th of the Hebrew month of Av. It's a fast day. It's supposedly the day where the first temple was destroyed in Jerusalem. The second temple was destroyed in Jerusalem. The Bar Kokhba revolt was overthrown. And then reoccurringly, other tragedies happened throughout Jewish history. And there's a struggle about whether we mark Tisha B'Av, the sad day that marks the destruction of the temple, that we do at weddings when we break the glass. We're reminded of the destruction of the temple. When we have a wall in our home that's bare except for a sign that points east towards Jerusalem as a remembrance of that. So it's easy for me today to say, oh, come to Tisha B'Av, observe Tisha B'Av, remember the destruction of the sadness of the Jewish people. It's easy for me to communicate that information, but it's hard for you to feel it in your guts. Like there's just no way in 2023 that you can feel the sadness of a Jew that witnessed the destruction of the first temple in 587, 586 BCE, because what do you have? You have the modern day state of Israel that's alive and well. Your son's been there, you've been there, right? Our families have been there, we live there, we love it, we send our kids there. So we have this odd situation where we have the state of Israel that exists, which lessens our sadness about Tisha B'Av, but we have more the ability to communicate. A Jew living 500, 600, 700 years ago has the opposite, where they don't have the state of Israel. And if you think about a timeline, anyone who's living 1,000 years ago is the furthest possible that you can be from a Jewish state, because the second temple was destroyed in the year 70 CE, and the modern day state of Israel came about in 1948. So I'm bad at math, but however you decide the number of years between 1948 minus 70 divided in half, whoever lived, oh my God, don't ask me to do math. I don't know, whatever it is, 800, 900. 1300, okay. If you say so, okay.
Ages.
Got it, right, Middle Ages.
So wasn't that kind of where God was kind of hidden anyway?
Well, we could argue that God's hidden in there. That's a great, Doria's a great point. So they're living, so a Jew living 1,000 years ago or 500, because the way Jewish history is, we kind of have these spans. So say 500 to 1,000 years ago, you have that flipped reality that we have You have no state of Israel. There hasn't been one since 70s. They've been living almost 1,000 years with no state, and there's not going to be one. They don't know this, but there's not going to be one until 1948, almost another 1,000 years. So they have the incredible sadness of not knowing state, but what don't they have? The ability to communicate, right? So what Tisha B'Av does, by being accentuated again and again, and by placing all these events that may or may not have happened on Tisha B'Av, you are reinforcing the message that you need to be sad, that you need to reflect on the sadness of all these tragedies that have happened in Jewish history on the 9th of the Hebrew month of Av. Whether or not they happen on that exact day, we're going to put them there. So it's almost this brilliance of overcompensating for the lack of communication, right? There's no printing. I think the printing press is like the end of this era, like late 1300s, early, the ones of Gutenberg printing press.
1500.
Okay, so we don't have printing presses yet, but Jews are very knowledgeable. We do read and we do talk about things. I love art and art history. A lot of art exists at the time in the Christian world that illustrates moments in the what do Christians call the whole Bible? Like the Old and the New Testament, whatever they call the whole Bible. The Hebrew Bible, the Jews call it, and the Christian Bible, the New Testament. If you go to any museum that has a lot of art from this one, well, I would say 1200, 1300, 1400 time period, it's a lot of biblical scenes. Why? Because they're uneducated masses who can't read, but you want to convey religion. And so you do it through this artistic way. All right. On top of that, you have the Crusades that are happening, these trips that are to Jerusalem, but along the way led to a lot of destruction through Europe that are killing Jewish communities. And you have not yet the Enlightenment, right? That comes, what we looked at last week, that comes really 1800s, where Jews are allowed to be in more secular professions, allowed to be part of the community at large, more in Western Europe than Eastern Europe. We'll see how long that lasts, because the Holocaust, started in Western Europe. So what we're going to look at today is this messaging that goes on with Tisha B'Av 1,000 years ago. So before I continue, does anyone have any questions? Okay, I'm going to share with you, and stop me at any time.
Is it a fasting day? Break rest.
Tisha B'Av is a fasting day.
And that's not today.
Today is not Tisha B'Av.
What is it?
It's the first, I think.
Wednesday,
Thursday.
Wednesday night, it's the 9th of the Hebrew month of Av, which I think corresponds with whatever that Wednesday is.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to show you two images. Now, it's been redone. I'm embarrassed to say I haven't been to Israel since 2016, but have any of you been at the Diaspora Museum? You've been at the Diaspora Museum in Tel Aviv. So it's been redone. Have you been there in recent years?
This year.
Okay, so it's been redone. You've probably been there since it's been redone too. I have not. They just did a big upgrade of it. So I haven't seen what's there now, but when you used to walk into the Diaspora Museum in Tel Aviv, this is the image that you would see. It is two statues. So before we talk about them, let's just describe them. Let's start with facts. What factually are you seeing about these two statues? Let's start with the statue on the left. Those on Zoom, you can unmute or put it in the chat. And those in the room, what do you see? What do you know? Just describe, don't make judgments yet, but just describe the statue on the left. Holding some sort of cross or T-shaped object. What else?
Does she have a crown?
What?
Does she have a crown?
A crown. Okay, so a crown and a cup, a chalice, something like that. What about expression and how head is positioned, posture, straight, strong, looking?
It looks like, the snake around it, whatever that is around. it.
Okay, so a vibrancy, a snake, something alive. That could be a medical reparative thing. Okay, let's go to the figure on the right. Now let's describe that figure.
She's looking away.
Not so strong.
Looking,
Blindfolded.
Blindfolded, thank you.
I can't.
Blindfolded. Elisa's my art lover like me. I think Elisa said that, or Diane said that.
I said it, but I watched Bird Box last night, if anyone saw it, where they have their eyes like covered.
So eyes actually blindfolded and the head looking down. What else?
He's dressed in a.
Carrying
the bag.
a bag. It's actually a tablet and it securely held, or it's supposed to convey about to slip. I don't know if that's conveyed or not. So
Oh, no.
figures on the left is called ecclesia, which means wisdom, and the right called synagogue, right? Which is what we synagogue. So these two figures used to stand at the entryway of the Diaspora Museum. I don't know if they're there anymore since it's been updated. And this image of statue was common in churches in the medieval times on. I think the first time the image appeared was in 866. And their Strasbourg synagogue has it. There's synagogues all over Europe that either have both figures side by side or have the only ecclesia, which is representative of the church. So now that you know the left side represents the church and the right side represents the synagogue, what messaging is by placing these statues in a church, and also talk about why in the Diaspora Museum, what messaging is the church trying to convey?
Why would you want to be Jewish?
Right. Why would you want to be Jewish? It's blind. It's been usurped by ecclesia, wisdom, Christianity, whatever you want to call it. And Judaism is, it's almost, it's as if you're watching someone like have their life take out of them. Like there's no vibrancy, there's no strength. The hand is holding, it's supposed to look like the tablets, the 10 Commandments, and they're supposed to be almost slipping. Right? That's there. And instead the church, right, is
Very strong.
and supposedly going forward, eyes gazing forward. And this was not a Hitler-esque understanding that Jews should be destroyed. What is it instead? Jews should convert. And we saw this all the way, because think of one of the greatest reminders of that Tisha B'Av marrying of history becomes with the expulsion of Jews. Isabel and Ferdinand, Christopher Columbus, if you want to argue who's Jews, that's one of the events that is said to happen on Tisha B'Av, is the expulsion of Jews from Spain. Again, that's very loose because the expulsion took time, it had impact, it wasn't like a one-day thing that you could do, but it's very convenient to assign at Tisha B'Av. So right at the beginning of this, like if we're talking about 1000 to 1500 CE, the last 500 years ago to 1000 years ago, you have not only the reality of the Jew on the ground, the Jew on the street, but that culturally the religion that is predominant where Jews are living is what you're walking into, right? This is the messaging. You don't need to read anything. You don't even know how to read. You look at that and you understand that Christianity is better than Judaism and that the Jews are blind, and they need to understand that Jesus, the Jew, created this new religion and the Jewish people now need to follow along. And so that's the reality of a Jew living in this time period of 1000 to 1500, 500 to 1000 years ago, the years 1000 to 500 that's there. I don't know if anyone remembers seeing those statues. Why would you put that? Let's just digress for a second. Why would you put that at a museum of the diaspora? Why do you think they're putting that in an Israeli museum about Jews around the rest of the world?
I think it gives a real reality check.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Right.
said we went to something with the Holocaust Museum, and I said something to our guide, and I said my dad had seen movies that were taken because he was a certain age, and they had to document the movies that were taken from Germans, and he used to say, no matter what they show in any of these books or TV shows or museums, it's nothing like what I saw.
Yeah,
And I said something to our guide and he said, you know what, they've toned it down. And I think that to this day, this is still a reality. So I'm gonna use my own reality. And I asked the Rabbi Dan, how you respond, but I think I would like a different answer. No, because I wasn't satisfied with that answer, I'm not gonna say. So my reality is, when someone who's a born again Christian tells you, and they're being nice and they find out you're Jewish, they'll tell you that they're doing Judaism 2.0. And you kind of want to say to them, no, this is not a different version of Judaism.
Right.
What you're saying. Judaism has continued and it's its own version from the days of.
right, and I think.
And I would like to maybe have a nicer, maybe comeback for
Right.
when they say that. 'Cause
I mean, or you can just say it's like arguing with someone who's so against your position that, is it worth my breath to even, explain to someone if they're not, like, they're determined. I talked about this when I talked about my sabbatical last month. I was, with mostly Christian professors at the Holocaust Museum, and a professor who was Jehovah's Witness wanted me to understand how much Judaism and Jehovah's Witness have in common in their Holocaust experience. And I was like, that's important for you, for me to know. It's not, I mean, it's interesting and I can hear about it, but it's not going to assuage anything for me. It's not going to help it. So now you see, this doesn't come from nowhere. It's literally on the statues. You don't even have to be literate to understand the messaging. And in the same way, it kind of, what Dory's saying kind of resonates with what I started our class at with Tisha B'Av. Everything bad is pushed to Tisha B'Av again and again and again and again to reinforce the message. In the same way, in the churches, the messaging that Judaism is blind and what we're doing is better has stuck till this day. You are shocked some of the things that happen in America today. The priority, like, are we a separation of church and state place? And now you see why, because these statues stood, it's amazing that statues that stood across the sea 1,000 years ago can affect our experience in the United States, but they do. The other thing that was on the rise in this time was the blood libel myth, that the blood of Christian children was put in the matzah at Passover. That was there. There's a lot of blood imagery that goes with Passover, right? The blood on the doorpost. And so all these rumors are out there at this time. And so what happens is you have a community that experiences again and again and again bad things. And so what Tisha B'Av does is it takes, like, the dog in your head, right? The dog and pants in your head, the exercise I started out with. Because, like, how am I supposed to deal with this? And my neighbor's dealing with it, and someone, 100 miles away is dealing with it. So what Judaism does is it creates a uniform text and a uniform mourning that we can do as a people. It doesn't mean that the bad will go away, but what it does mean is that you give a national character to the Jewish people. You say, you are not alone. We are going through these bad and difficult things together, and you will have texts that you can look back on and get through, and you can mourn as deeply. What happens, though, is there's others who say, like, why do we have to live this life of mourning? Why do we have to go to this place and be sad all the time and relive again the saddest and saddest? And it's this struggle that exists in Judaism. Here's how I feel. You can breathe and chew gum and laugh at the same time. It's okay. It's okay to have happiness, and it's okay to have sadness. I just was listening to a podcast yesterday, and they were talking about someone who didn't like Gandhi. Why didn't they like Gandhi? All right, Gandhi fought for all these great things, but Gandhi also was very, he was not a great husband, right? He was very restrictive of his wife. He was, played around a little bit, however you want to say it. So there's no reason Gandhi couldn't have been a good husband and faithful husband and also change the world. For some reason, like, it didn't happen that way. And we can expect of people that they can both mourn and rejoice. And that's what Judaism asks us to do. So on one way, we're going to look at, so what I did for today is take us to some of these medieval commentators. Rashi is a very familiar medieval commentator. He's famous, his lifespan, like, Germany and France, where those lands would be today. And what he does is, he looks at a text and then we look at Rashi's commentary and go to Tisha B'Av and what they're saying. And this is how, I mean, you want to talk about marking Tisha B'Av in a sad way. This is it. So let me make this a little bigger and we'll go to Martha, are you okay to read Rabbi Bar-Hana? And I'll move it down.
And that Rabbi Yohanan said the 15th of Av was the day in which the death of the Jews in the wilderness ceased. The entire generation that had left Egypt had passed away. As the master said, after the sins of spies, on account of which the Jews of that generation were sentenced to die in the wilderness, as long as the death of the Jews in the wilderness had not ceased, God's speech did not come to Moses as it is stated. And it came to pass, when all the men of war were consumed and dead from among the people, that the Lord spoke to me, saying, this indicates that only then, after the last member of that generation had died, was God's speech delivered to me. Moses, but not beforehand. When the Jews realized that the decree that God would not speak to Moses had been lifted, they established that day as a permanent day of rejoicing.
Okay, so then what do we go to? So Tu B'Av, which is the love holiday today, that's when you're able to rejoice again. And then what does Rashi say about how to observe Tisha B'Av, which is this sad day, which is supposedly the day where this is proclaimed that generation has to die. In addition, so you're going backwards in time. Before the destruction of the first temple, before the destruction of the temple, you're giving a biblical moment, the ninth of the Hebrew month of Av. So Judith, are you okay to read or is it too far? No, okay. Tell me your first name again. Russell, go ahead.
The day on which the death ceased to the desert.
So that's Rashi. Rashi is the Peshat guy who he's going to look at that. He's I love Rashi. He's very literal. I'm very literal. So this is Rashi's commentary on what we just read.
As it was 40
Right, or the teaching.
all 40 years out they will be in the desert. Every Arab Tisha B'Av, the family would go out and say that each individual go out and dig his grave.
So he is going and saying they marked Tisha B'Av all 40 years in the desert. So now we're really going backwards in time. Keep going.
And every single person would go out and dig for themselves a grave and sleep in it in case they would die before they had died. And the next day, the proclaimer would go out and proclaim, let the living separate themselves from the dead, and everyone who has soul of life will go rise and go out of his way. And every year they would do this, and in the 40th year they did it. The next morning, everyone stood up alive.
So what's happening here? Because of the sin of the spies, it doesn't work chronologically because the spy incident is a little bit into it, right? You know that from Torah study. But what it's saying is Erev Tisha B'Av became this weeding out day where on this sad day, you would check if it was their time to die because they were from the first generation, and you only knew when you were counting the second generation on the last Tisha B'Av when everybody didn't die in the grave. So first of all, that like vampire-esque.
Halloween almost.
It's like Halloween, it's vampire-esque. Can you imagine on Tisha B'Av you could dig a grave and lie in your dirt of the grave? But like you talk about mourning, like, you know, when you mourn, Jewishly, you're supposed to mimic the dead. You don't look in a mirror. You don't, if you remember, like back in New York, we like wood corrugated boxes that look like wood. Remember those? I remember my grandparents sitting on, and you eat round foods. You like mimic the dead. The same on Yom Kippur. I mean, talk about mimicking the dead. Like Dory said, it's like very Halloween-esque. What? Round food to remind you of the circle of life, like eggs and round beans and things. Maybe not in the South, I don't know, but might be a more regional custom. Maybe not Orthodox. Or maybe not non-Orthodox, yeah. And so here, like, and remember, this is Rashi. What is going on in 1000 BCE? I mean, 1000 CE, the Crusades.
the Crusades, Rashi's life and the beginning of the Crusades are happening at the same time. If you think about when something, like think about when COVID first started or when a war first started, like those of you remember the Vietnam War, like it's so bad at the beginning, like you're so worried, and then you kind of get numb and used to it. Rashi is living at a time when the Crusades are just starting, which means all of a sudden, I mean, Jews have been persecuted, but now there's like organized mass persecution coming through your town on the way to Jerusalem, sometimes not even going to Jerusalem, just destroying, raping, pillaging that's there. So you can almost imagine that people are living with this fear all the time. Or you think about like, you hear stories of, I think I dreamt, I was like in the Holocaust last night, like in a grave or in hiding somewhere. Like I studied this too much. Like it's in my dreams, it's enter there, where you're just hiding, you know, or no, Anne Frank or whatever. Like you're always hiding. There's something that's there in our subconscious as a Jew. But here you're literally hiding. And then you get to this point where then everyone's alive, which means you've gone through that generation, and then only then can you go into the land of Israel. But all of a sudden you see the psyche of a rabbi living through the time of Crusades where it's so bad, and you have to hang your hat on Tisha B'Av in order to express the horror of what's going on in the time. And one of the, I don't do this as a modern rabbi, but one of the features of even like rabbis during the Holocaust or during this time is like they don't refer blatantly to events that are happening. Like if you read Kalimonis Ben Shapiro, who is the rabbi of the Warsaw Ghetto, he never says things stink in the Warsaw Ghetto. Instead, he says, remember when, you know, Isaac was nearly sacrificed by his father? Well, anyone who's going through an experience of fearfully nearly sacrificed, look to that text, right? He's never saying like, we're about to be sacrificed. We're going from the Warsaw Ghetto into Auschwitz, but instead he uses text. It's the same thing here. Rashi doesn't say the Crusaders are coming in and killing our community, but he says, imagine every year feeling like you need to go lie in a grave and see if you're not going to wake up. They're experiencing that every darn day with the Crusaders that are coming through, that are there. I want to, and so again, these are the people that are seeing these statues and acting upon them. That's literally what's happening there. Then there's kind of the opposite point of view, which is that we're told, there are times we're told that things are going to get better. And so when things are better, whether it's better today, right? Like there is a state of Israel today, or better in biblical texts, right? Or Mishnaic texts, we have to acknowledge that there's better, okay? So this is from Zechariah, which addresses what do you do when things are better? All right, Dory, do you want to read in the fourth year?
In the 4th year of King Darius, on the 4th day of the 9th month, Kislev, the word of God came to Zechariah. When Bethel-Shazar and Regan-Melech and his men sent to entreat the favor of God and to address this inquiry to the priests of the house of God and to the prophets. Shall I weep and practice abstinence in the 5th month, as I have been doing all these years? Whereupon the word of God of hosts came to me. Say to all the people of the land and to the priests, when you fasted and lamented on the 5th and 7th month, all these 70 years, did you fast for my benefit? And when you eat and drink, who but you does the eating, who but you does the drinking? Look, this is the message that God proclaimed through the earlier prophets, when Jerusalem and the towns about her were peopled and tranquil, when the Negev and the Shephelah were people, and the world of God to Zechariah continued. Thus said God of hosts, execute true justice, deal loyally and compassionately with one another. Do not defraud the widow, the orphan, the stranger, and the poor, and do not plot evil against one another.
Okay, where else do you see this messaging? Is it familiar? What day of the year do we see the same messaging? What's the fast day? Yom Kippur, right? So this is kind of the flip side, it's saying, first of all, you're back, right? This is after the first exile, the destruction of the first temple in 587, 586 BCE, the Babylonian exile. It's only a 70-year exile. Cyrus the Great lets us come back in. Wait, is it Cyrus the Great? Yeah, Cyrus the Great lets us come back in. So why are you going to fast? Because you're back, at least for a period of time. And people, like, when you fast, who are you really fasting for? Like, God's saying, like, it's not for me. You're doing it, you're feeling the hunger, you're feeling the thirst, I'm not feeling anything. And it's not changing your behavior. And really what you need to do instead of fasting, be good and be kind and live the right way. Like that fasting doesn't cut it. It's like the metaphor of the lulav and etrog, where, you know, there's some people who are like carry out halakha, God's laws, but are horrible people. And there's some people that are wonderful people that both don't carry out God's laws. The ideal is someone who does both that there. So there's no interest in having you fast if the fast is meaningless to you. And so another medieval commentator says, so if that's the case, once we're restored there, shouldn't fast. So Radak, who's from Provence region, in this period of time, you know, in this 500 to 1,000 years ago period, we're looking at Radak. So his commentary says, Jerusalem will be called the city of truth, as he promised. The remnant of Israel shall neither commit injustice nor speak lies. So that's the end goal. That you don't do injustice, you don't speak lies. The same is true for all the land of Israel. The verse specifies Jerusalem because she is the head of the kingdom, and furthermore because of the mountain of the Lord, the holy mountain, which will no longer be profaned by strangers. So the Lord said, I will return to Zion. My intention is to return to Zion in order that my presence be established there as it was before, which means if my presence there is before, why are you fasting? Why are you mourning? Don't mourn. You can see, even 1,000 years ago, this push and pull, like, do we keep observing once we return to the land?
But isn't it in the Torah that we should have a fast day?
No, there's for Tisha B'Av,
Oh, no.
for Yom Kippur, yeah,
Okay.
not for Tisha B'Av. Now, I want to kind of, any questions or comments from those online or those in person? What I want to do, and stop me at any time, what I want to do you have a question, Margaret?
Well,
Go ahead.
if you don't mourn, you have to remember when you do the Holocaust, the things. That's what you're saying. Done, it's over, and we're okay. Get over it.
Right. Well, I don't think we're a get over it kind of people.
Well, that's just.
Otherwise, kids won't have to read their bar mitzvah or bar mitzvah. Yeah, we don't get over it, exactly. I think that's the struggle is, so what does getting over it look like? Do you dig a grave and lie in it for that day? Do you do nothing? Do you fast? I think that's the navigation of the Jewish people. Look, right now, like the way people are talking about it is, so like it feels like I'm super curious to see how this Tisha B'Av is going to play out in Israel. It's a very sad, difficult time in Israel. How is that going to play out? So what I want to do is show you how strong. So like we think we're so wonderful and modern with our modern technology that we convey information. But the Jewish people, by again and again assigning all these tragic events to Tisha B'Av, did something. They got it into the head of the Jewish people that you are going to feel sadness, however it looks, on this day. And there are so I'm going to show you two very modern examples of this ancient concept. This is one of my favorite songs. It's a very sad song. It's a feud or a mourning kind of song. It's called Sion Tamati. And it comes from the Psalms. If I forget you, thee, O Jerusalem, and my right hand loses cunning, and my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth. That's it. So let's just look at the English. Will you read Zion, my perfect one? I'll make it nice and big. Let me make it bigger. Hold on, give me a second. Does that work?
And when was this written?
I think I have to double check.
You go down.
I have to double check. Zion, my perfect one.
One Zion, my desire. For you, my soul yearns from afar. Let me Let my right hand wither if I forget you, my fair one. Before the pit of my grave closes its mouth on me. I can't get this.
You want me to finish up?
I can't see you.
I will not forget you, Zion. I will not forget you, my perfect one. As long as I live, you are my longing and my hope. When I forget everything, you will be the remnant of my soul, Zion. You, Zion, will mark my grave. So there's this promise that even if I forget everything else that's important, that this idea of my connection to the Jerusalem, to the temple, will always be there, whether I'm in the land or out of the land that's there. Now, this is like, it's like funny, not funny, but one of the modern Israeli, so I love this song, so you'll hear it, but one of the modern Israeli dances, folk dances, is to this song. So you think of the irony of like these kibbutzniks doing these folk dances in Israel, which is now a state, dancing to the song that says, I'm so sad that if I forget everything else, I'll still remember you. And I promise you that. So it's kind of a very, it's so Jewish in a way. It's so like confused and like, it's like blot out the name of Amalek and never forget him. It's, you know, it's both those things at once. So this is that song, Sion Tamati, in a very, I mean, modern for, you know, the 1970s is very modern for Israel. So here, this is this beautiful song, and this is really. For me. We'll put it all up 70s clothes.
We're gonna add that to the line dance circle.
You have a line dance circle? Oh, is there, right? So this, it's so almost amusing, except it's sad that like, so you have the modern day state, it's a kibbutz setting. These are the only 4 people in the kibbutz that can find to do Israeli dance. I never liked Israeli dance, it's like a nightmare to me, but it's very beautiful to watch those who can do it. And so they're dancing this Israeli folk dance in this very secular kibbutz setting, but it's all about Jerusalem and the temple. And like, you know, that's how that confusing Tisha B'Av is, because you have this modern sensibility, we're in the land, we have the land, and yet we still mourn the loss of the first and second temple. And if you want to get even a little more modern, and I'll just play a little bit of it, Dan Nichols, who's been here many times, a fabulous Jewish musician, just listen to the words of his song, My Heart is in the East. Let me just make sure. And you will hear him say, it's morning here, but I'm thinking of you there. And this is a Reformed Jewish songwriter, right? We're dealing with our setting. And yet even he's saying, I can't fully be here. So by marking Tisha B'Av, you're on purpose causing discomfort for yourself by choice, because all of you could get up and make Aliyah to Israel right now, right? Live there, sell real estate there, do whatever you want to do there, right? The things are expensive. Yeah, I don't know what commissions are like,
The
but
most expensive place in the country now.
what?
World. It's the world. The real estate.
Israel?
Is the most expensive.
Wow,
in
so there you go.
California.
I don't know if the commissions are the same. I don't know
Well,
if anyone's knowledgeable
That's
about that.
debatable anyway.
Yeah. So, while 1,000 years ago, a Jew doesn't have a choice, right? They're limited because of crusades, they're limited because of geography, they're limited because at every church doorway is synagogue and ecclesia.
So you're stuck in a different way. So this is asking you to struggle. So Dan Nichols is articulating that struggle. So let's just play a little bit of that. So you see this ancient idea is playing out in our modern music. There we go.
As I watch the sun start to rise from my seat 5 miles in the sky, I'm staring into a brand new day. For you, it's already fading away. Everything that I say or I do, there's so much tied to you now. It's kind of funny how I adore someone I've never met before, but my heart is in the east. My heart is in the east.
Right. And I think that's
Your audio is breaking up.
The audio is breaking up? Is that, Ron, do you know, is it Steve's audio? Or is it all?
No, that's
mine?
better now.
No, that was yours. It's better now, but for a moment, yeah, it was all garbly.
Okay, I'll come closer. So I think Margaret's question is a good one. How do you feel being tied up to Jerusalem in Tisha B'Av? Like, are you so tied to Israel that you are okay to mentally be somewhere else in your head? Dan Nichols, I think, like Margaret's saying, is writing that song, like he's happy to have Israel to be mentally tied up to. But I will tell you, a lot of young people are struggling with that today and their feelings about Israel. And all, I mean, of all ages too, like, and it's painful because you want to teach the love of Israel first and then struggle, but we're not teaching the love enough. Like, how can we mourn something we don't even love? And I think that's what sometimes gets lost by not marking Tisha B'Av. I think a great starting point is to observe and mark Tisha B'Av, because then you really understand loss and losing something and sadness. And then, you know, it comes like tomorrow is my late brother's birthday. And I've been so sad today. And like, there's nothing different, you know, but like my body is just so in touch. No, I know. And my body's so in touch that my late brother's birthday is tomorrow, like that I'm so sad. Like, how does it do that? And I think Tisha B'Av is trying to do the same thing, like push on you, be sad about Jerusalem. And if I tell you to be sad enough, eventually you'll get intrinsic and then you'll love as much as Dan Nichols can love as well. I want to show you one more modern iteration, which again is repair. I think Margaret's point that, you know, that song is a happy one is really beautiful and leads nicely into this image that I'll show you here. So this is a sculpture from 1950. And it's the two characters again, synagoga and ecclesia. But now, if you were to compare that, I'll just remind you of the original, right? You know, they're sitting in churches, they're usually separate. This is the way they are. Now, what's the change here in this 1950 sculpture?
They're equal.
They're equal, they're seated together. What else?
They're each looking at the other's.
Text, right, they're engaging. It's not no one's usurping.
They're
There's
both looking down.
Both engaged. They both have they're reading, right? They have a reading or humility, right? Like, there's no reason that I need to make you feel bad, which is I think what Dory was referring to earlier.
you don't need to make me feel bad about my religion, and I don't need to make you feel bad about religion. I need to be so happy for you that you have a religion you love and care so much. Now, I have a religion I love and care so much that when my people mourns, I mourn as if, as if I'm there at the moment. And when I rejoice and get the Torah, I rejoice as if I'm there in the moment. So how remarkable is it that Tisha B'Av and these medieval ideals of like, I'm not there. Because again, this period of time, we're looking at this week, you could not be farther away from getting to Jerusalem, whether it's 1,000 years earlier or 1,000 years in front of you, and yet you're still finding this hope that we will get through this time, and we will go forward, and there will be a time when we are able to mark this, but we're always going to struggle with it. And the last thing I want to end with is David Lincoln. He's a great modern scholar that says this very question: should we continue to fast or not? That they're struggling with it in modern times, and even they're struggling with 500, 1,000 years ago, as you can see from Radak and from Rosh. Okay, so Sue, do you want to read? It would be an error. Okay, here, I'll move it over here. Zakaria.
Answers the questions of the messengers and issues a halachic ruling. His word contained no halachic ruling, neither in 7.5-6 nor in 8.19. The question of the delegation and its discussion merely served as a background to elicit his prophecy. Zechariah, in responding to the question of the fast, begins with a true evaluation of this question and explains the true nature of this fateful question: sin, punishment, the requirement of repentance.
Okay, so you can stop there. So here's our issue, right? You can fast on Tisha B'Av in 2023, but what is that fast going to mean to you? How deep is that fast touching your soul? How much is it going to affect you and change you? Do you need crusades and chaos and destruction all around you? Like, am I more concerned about Tisha B'Av in Israel this year because of what's going on? Shouldn't I have been just as concerned last year or the year before? Right? It's asking you to say, like, every year you should give your guts to whatever you're going to do. But what your guts really mean is not the not eating and the not drinking, but the like really changing the world so that you strive for people to have education and for people to have fairness that's in society, that's there. I'm just looking here, and then this last, when there is peace, there will be joy and happiness, meaning when there is peace, that Israel occupies their land. So that this idea of tying up your happiness with the temple in Jerusalem. How many of you really do that? And then you add, as a modern, another complexity where, we have the modern day state of Israel, but some people say, no, we shouldn't be going there until the temple's rebuilt. Well, if you want a World War III, that's how you're going to get it, by rebuilding the temple. And I don't know if you've seen this going on in Israeli news right now, but the Sephardic, I think it's the Sephardic chief rabbi, just criticized Ben Gvir, because Ben Gvir goes up to the Temple Mount, and the Sephardic chief rabbi, it's not a political thing, like, oh, we shouldn't go up to the Temple Mount. It's you shouldn't go up until the third temple is built, so you know if you're walking in the right places or not. That's there. So there's this idea.
He went up to the Temple Mountain.
He goes up. He went up when he got his position, and this criticism just came out. I don't know how regularly he goes up, because it's a big, there can be a lot of things, but he does go up there, and the problem with doing it, not that a righteous thing is going on, just that we shouldn't go up until the third temples were built. So you're kind of in this rock in the hard place, because people say, as long as there's not a temple, well, because what's there now, the Dome of the Rock, the Al Askamah. And if there's not a temple there, yes, you need to mourn. And other people say, why am I going to mourn? There's a modern day state of Israel. So there's this struggle that goes on inside of us. But even like what I would wish is like that you could even like reflect that struggle in the way Dan Nichols does, right? That you sit here and you're like, oh my God, it's morning here or midday here, but like mentally, I'm in, I'm in my head in night. If you think about, like, for me, what that brings to mind is, I don't know if you remember when Rabin was assassinated, it was night in Israel, still the afternoon here. And like, you remember where you are. And like, I remember, I think it was like 3 p.m. when the news came out here. And I was just transported, like, I imagine a dark Israel nighttime and how sad, and you're also seeing that on the news. So that's what, the text ask of us. Any closing questions or comments?
I'm gonna, when you talk
I
about,
think you're gonna speak a little louder.
when you think of, you mentioned that you wonder what it's gonna be like at Tisha B'Av this year in Israel. I don't think it'll be any different. I mean, the Orthodox are at Israel, and they go to the, the big thing going up to the wall and study
Yeah.
there.
I think for secular Jews though,
Yeah.
I think there's gonna be an added layer, in my opinion. Again, I don't, for secular Jews who may not have observed before Tisha B'Av, but right now with such split and, just upheaval and, what's going on with democracy and justice, I think a secular Jew may be able to resonate with Tisha B'Av. I mean, the way you hear people talking, they're super sad about what's going on now. So yes, I think you're right. It's not going to change for a community that celebrates full on with this whole heart every year. But for some people it might be, and I think that's what's very powerful about Judaism. This is a great metaphor. Like, you think of, I found, again, this might be my own like idealization of Judaism. I found that when COVID hit, like, I feel like as a temple and as a people, we're able to pivot so quickly because we're just used to responding to disaster and tragedy. And so we just were able to, like, I was so happy that Friday night, I had no idea what any other day of the week was, but when Friday was coming and those services were coming, like, I knew it was Shabbat. It gave order and meaning to this COVID, those months, like, June, July, August, we thought would have been out of it 2020 and we weren't.
I think Tisha B'Av has a different meaning for Jews.
Yes.
And that's the difference there. So
Yeah.
we're sad for the present.
Interesting. Yeah. And a lot of Jewish summer camps
Are sad for the past.
right, and they want a real temple. But some people want a real temple. And if you go to Jewish summer camp, I think Tisha B'Av is marked in different. Lisa, did you mark it at Jewish summer camp? So you're nodding your head.
Oh,
We just lost, you're already garbled again, Rabbi.
skip me.
We're gonna end, and we thank everyone for joining. Sorry to bring you down, but listen to some Dan Nichols. You'll feel better. Thank you so much for being with us this week, and we'll see you next week.